up, so that's a good sign. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Well, yay us. So, welcome, along with all of my other friends, to the Audio Opinion Show, which hasn't been around for a long time, but is kind of here now. So, if you're seeing this for the first time, welcome. It's basically just a group of audio guys that gather together and talk about audio stuff. It's nothing real too exotic. I want to welcome the guys that have shown up. It's a kind of a broad range of folks. We've got some wireless gurus, and we've got some field production people, and we've got some live audio people, and we've got just sort of a mixture of different folks. And Bill Davis, who snuck in at the last second. So hello, Bill, is a good friend of mine, who his audio specialty is sounding really good. That's his primary audio specialty. So welcome, Bill, for the first time. You missed some of the precursors, so just follow along. All will be well. So let's just hop right into the polling. Except my polls aren't working. Well, that's sad. That makes me sad.
We could raise hands.
Okay, well, so the reality is I was kind of cheating the polls thing anyway. Normally the polls work. I didn't test this ahead of time. Sorry. But just as a show of hands, and this would mean yes, and this would mean no, for review, is The Princess Bride the greatest movie of all time? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 correct votes, and 2 other people who are wrong. I'm sorry, you're just wrong. Some things are just true. Some things are not a matter of opinion, and that The Princess Bride is the greatest movie of all time is not really a matter of opinion. So I had a second polling question. I already forgot what it was. And then, frankly, for the topic tonight, I decided to do something a little bit different and just kind of really like make it super loose, just to kind of welcome us all back. And then we'll argue about stuff next week. But I wanted to just find out, does anybody besides me have a favorite piece of audio gear? And it can be favorite because you liked working with it at a particular time because it was cool, like it's an old like tube thing, or it's a new toy you're working with, and it's okay if you have more than one. So don't feel like you have to think about this too hard. Like you can answer once and then hear 3 other answers and then come back and go, oh, but I've also got another one. So do I have a volunteer that right off the bat, they thought, and Mac, you raised your hand. You are the first one.
Yeah, because there was a piece of gear. I don't use it anymore. But for 25 years, the instant replay made my life much better. I've worn out 2 of them, and I'm not going to buy another because I don't do that anymore. But
I never got a chance to use one. Why is that one better? Why is that better than QLab, for example?
Well, because it has 50 programmable buttons on it, and you can just in some ways it sucks compared to QLab because the instant replay has no file management capability whatsoever, and that's a big downer. But the fact that you can load up 50 buttons, and if you have 2 of them like I did, 100 buttons, and have 10 banks of those buttons, you can get to any kind of effect or sting or music cut faster than anything I've ever seen. I mean, it's fast enough that I can have a drum roll cue and a rim shot and end the drum roll cue with the rim shot, and you can't tell it's 2 cues. It's
so could you do that with Stream Deck and QLab, or is, I know that your device precedes all of that, but
yeah,
if you wanted to emulate that, could you use a Stream Deck and a QLab to do that?
I think so, but it involves a lot more work.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
go ahead, Mike. It involves a lot more different work. QLab, well, I mean, instant replay requires a lot of work because you have to load it.
Oh.
You know, you got to play every cut into it. Whereas QLab is file management. You know, you just move files and it's instantly there. You don't instant replay isn't like that. But once you have all the files, they're on buttons and you just go.
I did that
well,
once.
Go ahead.
I
go
stunk.
ahead. Well, and the instant replay, for those of us who've done corporate stuff and done corporate theater is what we call it in the biz.
Or baseball.
Or baseball, exactly, or sports or whatever. I mean, it was the device that did what we now do with computers easily, but back in the day, it was not easy to do. Like there was nothing else that would do it. And just the fact that you could, program a bunch of hard buttons. I also am a big fan of, I want a piece of hardware that I push a button and something happens instead of a click of a mouse or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I now use a Stream Deck and QLab for the same functionality, but honestly, if they made an instant replay that was just a remote control.
Oh, God. I complained to them about that for 25 years.
Yeah, I'd buy it in a second, like it, and spend a lot of money for it because.
Right. Or sell me a 2-box system. It's got a computer and it's got that instant replay interface.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So yeah, what you guys are talking about is you're actually saying that you want a hardware controller that will drive, say, QLab or whatever, but looks like the instant replay interface.
What's different about
Andy,
it than the
over to you.
Stream Deck?
So
What's different about it than the Stream Deck, though?
what I was
green
green
button. There was a big green button for go and a big red one for stop.
Yeah.
And there was
That's
a
that's all
jog
Stream
wheel
Deckable.
to go through the
jog wheel.
programs.
We don't have a jog wheel on the Stream Deck. That's true.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. One is that there's no reason why 360 systems can't do what you just said, because in the trucks, for example, God, my video is really lagging. The instant replays are rack mounted devices.
Yep.
And they're just, and what's on them usually is like, they go to the coming back from commercial and they do the whoosh or whatever it is, that kind of stuff. So there's no reason why they couldn't just have hardware, punch buttons. That's one. Two is, just speaking from experience. So on the shows that I'm A1 for, where they're like, we're giving you an instant replay, I'm like, okay. And but typically half the time I don't have time to load it. So I'm just firing it off my computer. I love the instant replay. Don't get me wrong. The buttons are great on it. And before Stream Decks and QLab, it was, what you used, or you used your laptop. I was using my laptop to just fire cues because I wouldn't have time to load it some of the time. Anyway.
Yeah, that was always a big thing. Bill, who
Yes.
has come trained to us from another show, raises his hand rather than
I'm used to
interrupting
this.
like the rest of us rude audio people.
Was that Miss Jameson's class, grade 3? That training, that show.
But I will
That's the
say,
Boy Scout
as
salute. I
the
don't
one
know.
who has to corral all these folks, I do appreciate it. Bill, please comment.
You said favorite audio gear. You didn't specify it had to be modern. It couldn't be ancient. So I have two. In the modern era, anything with 32-bit float, so I don't have to freak out so much if I'm in the field and I've got to capture something with a lot of dynamic range. But my heart is actually owned by something I found at a yard sale about 20 years ago, and it was a wire recorder from like 1929 or something. It has a beautiful bakelite Art Deco microphone. It still works to this day, and every time I look at it, came with about 5 reels of wire. I just think about how much distance there is between that seminal idea of being able to capture a human being's voice and today how far we've come, and it just astonishes me.
Well, and and that's part of the reason why I said what I said about, favorite thing. It's like, old cool stuff is still like my favorite things. Somebody like a week ago posted an old piece of test gear like a spectrum analyzer or something, like really like with a weird printer and like what, I'm just like, I want to buy this. I don't need it. It's not going to do anything for me, but I want it because it's got old cool knobs on it. And so I want it. So who's next on the favorite cool thing?
I'll say one, not a piece of gear, but a piece of technology that I think doesn't necessarily get. Hey, you guys hear me? You hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. One piece of technology that I think got kind of chalked up to gimmicky that I think was more of a game changer than they got credit for was just the whole concept of remote iPad control for consoles and being able to walk around, whether you're doing monitors or system tuning, and really like stand next to a musician and hear what they're hearing through the wedges on stage, or walk around and hear a system in different locations making real-time changes. When it came out, it was just kind of a cool gimmick or whatever, and then people adapted into their workflow. I don't know, from getting to see both sides of it, I think it's kind of like a game changer thing.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Not to, I'm sorry, didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
But I agree with you 100%. I mean, back in the dark ages, there's a couple of folks on this panel that probably remember these. The BSS Vericurve had a big giant remote that you could, if you were clever, hook up a wireless transmitter like from a microphone, and then it would, with FSK, it would transmit from the remote to the processor. It was just a big parametric key, a bunch of parametric EQs. That's all it did was parametric EQ. It sounded phenomenal, but it allowed you to do the early version, Jesse, of exactly what you're talking about. And I distinctly remember I was doing the graduation for the Naval Academy. It was the first time that I was able to walk out in a big outdoor show in a small stadium, but like a little football stadium.
Is that Marine Navy Field?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And walk up in the bleachers and like tweak my zones and walk up and tweak, and it was just like, and so
remember when the Protea came out?
Yeah,
right. It was tethered, but like you could control however many graphic EQs from Monitor World. You could step out on the deck, and it was tethered, but still.
I will say
that's something. So you guys had long cables, and you'd go walking out on stage with these things and remote control digital EQs.
Stone knives and bearskins, my friend. The olden days were dark.
Jesse, we had one at that venue that you and I worked at.
Which venue was that?
Wrecker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tom Roy had one of those in Monitor World.
The error is BBT.
Those were the original
Bluetooth
EQs that we had out there for monitors.
But I mean, I will say, like, the amount of miles that I walked from wherever I was controlling something to wherever the sound was, regardless of the situation, lots and lots of walking from where the controls were to where the sound is and listening and walking back and changing something and walking back and change. I would probably weigh 100 pounds more just based on the exercise I got when I was younger. But no, I agree with you 100%, Jesse. Like, you see it as a game changer as someone who's younger in the business. Us old farts really see it as a game changer because absolutely revolutionary, like huge change.
Did any of you Yamaha guys used to do a motion computing M13 tablet running Windows 98 with Yamaha Manager running my PM5D? I used to go out on stage, adjust the graphic EQs on the mixes, and then I had an occasion on a big charity show where we got through sound check. Everything was perfect. I mean, I had Kip Winger on stage and all these guys, and everything was great. Everybody loved it. And then I saved, and then we came back for showtime, and the console had lost everything. And it wasn't in my file when I recalled.
Oof.
Ouch.
That was the last time I used Yamaha Manager for that.
Yeah, I will say
Yeah.
that the one huge advantage we had in the analog days was that the console did not magically zero itself out. Like
No,
that
that took
didn't
some
happen.
jerk coming along. who
Annoyingly,
was up
yeah.
next.
Yeah,
You should have
Some
seen the
jerk who was going to be
Either
mixing next who
stripe
just got
tape
started,
for
you know.
opening
Like,
acts.
You didn't
Yeah.
do
the
it.
band turned and looked
Yeah.
at me, and their eyes were like saucers. Yeah.
I will say that and thank you, Jason, for joining us. It's good to see your face. But I am going to do one of these, and I will like warn ahead of time so everybody can prepare their best story. But like the nightmare story, and frankly, those apply whether it's a band story or it's a corporate or it's a film shoot or it's like we all have the awesome stories. But I think Jason, you already heard what our topic was. I don't know if you have anybody else want to pipe up with a favorite piece of gear. Go, Jason. Jason, I'm going to call you Jason because you were the first Jason here because Mr. Glass was late. So, he was late. So, Jason, meet Jason. Jason. Jason from originally from some other country, living in some other country, has a favorite piece of. Go on, please.
Fill in the blank there. Yes, originally from Australia.
We're the other country.
True.
Yes, Australia is the original country, and Tokyo or Japan is now the current country. So, and Bill Davis, nice to see you from our FCPX summit the other day. That was a fantastic trip. My favorite bit of gear, oddly enough, is much smaller scale than you guys, but it's what I'm using right now here in my house. So I was doing a show when we had COVID kickoff called Live Streams with Famous Friends, because I have a few famous friends and do live streams. So I run in my home studio here with my ATEM switcher, which I'm going to switch on right now. That little beast there is phenomenal. That is the Zoom Live Track L8. Now you can see if I pan up a little bit here on a GoPro, I have 6 Neutrik composite XLR quarter-inch jack inputs. Eighth inch, quarter inch. Yes, right. Sorry. And then I've got channel 7 and 8 over here, which I'm running right now. I'm running your playback for myself on channel number 7 through the USB input. Then I've got an iPhone input, which I can run through there. I run my guitar stuff through channels 3 and 4 in stereo. 5 and 6, I run my keyboards. So just to give you an idea of why this thing is so cool, all right? If I turn around and play my synth right now, bring up a nice sound. Any Van Halen fans in the house by any chance?
Yeah, I think Van Halen works. I think that works.
Yeah. That's not getting to us, Jason.
Nothing.
Here you go. So that works perfectly, and you should be hearing that in pretty decent fidelity, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a cool little box. I had heard that the Zoom H8, is that what it's called?
Yes, the H8 can do a similar thing, but that's more a smaller handheld.
Okay, so what's the model number of the one that you're looking at?
For the Live Track L8, they write it as 8. They do a 12 and a 20 as well, but the advantage of the 8 is the 8 with the iPhone input actually has a mix minus on there. So you can be using a speaker and you don't have to worry about noise coming back. The other thing that makes this thing so cool is you've got 4 individual headphone outputs here, and you can actually mix completely separate mixes on those all inside. And the other thing on top of that makes this thing phenomenal is, unlike most mixers, which you can just stream on or record on, you can actually stream and record simultaneously on this thing. So all these different features you can do simultaneously, and that's what makes it so cool.
All this for $299.
Well, it is. I mean, it is cool because it's like it combines a whole lot of different stuff that we're all. Because this, I do feel this question on a fairly regular basis of, I need a small thing that does all these other things. And it's like, well, I can do that with my CL5 and Dante virtual sound card and, a Waves rack. But I think what you're looking for is something maybe a little bit more, and so to have something that like does all the bits like in a smaller package is very cool.
Well, the other
Brian,
And it,
by the way,
it looks
what-
like you're teed up to play us the outro solo to Dreams.
But
On
before
that
you
guitar.
do, make sure you turn on stereo audio on your Zoom settings so we can hear it in stereo.
well, actually, I should be in stereo, so I believe I've got it set to stereo.
It's not.
Mono.
Okay. Oh, let me fix that for you.
Not the good time to be
Turn
on
off,
incoming
turn off
stereo
original
mono
sound,
earbud.
all that crap.
I thought I was.
And
It's
if
a
you nail
Zoom-
this
it's a
solo,
Zoom-
I'm about to go
There it is.
burn my guitars.
I am set to use stereo, but I have no. I haven't disabled noise cancelling, so I'm set to stereo. I'm set to high fidelity music.
Got turn on original sound. Which way does it go?
Use
That
original
stupid switch at the
audio.
top. Which way is the way that makes it right?
How's this? So if I go left only,
No,
right only.
no.
Well, it's weird because I've set it so it now says turn off original sound.
Okay, you
Which
got
is
that
Your
right.
front end guitar plug-in too. So the,
Echo on your
the
voice.
chain
there.
is long.
I'm using a fractal audio X8.
Ed, what's the setting, Ed? How do you get stereo?
Yeah, it could be Brian's backend setting. It has to be enabled by the meeting host. So
Oh, I see what just happened.
Way to go,
Yeah,
audio
We
guy.
just blamed Brian for the audio problems.
No,
I see
no,
how
not
this.
just
I
Brian,
think this
but
all
Brian's
No, no,
back
affected me.
end.
I
Well, and we're ducking his solo. I just heard the first beautiful
All right.
intro lead.
Whether it be mono or stereo, we definitely want to, as a group, listen to and I promise I'll stop yakking, so we can hear. Go, Jason.
I just had to remember it because I'm probably going to screw up. Actually, you know what? I'll turn on my other camera here so you can see it better. That'd probably be a nice idea. I have a Canon 5D Mark IV over here as my auxiliary guitar camera.
Getting an echo. Is everybody else getting an echo?
Probably 'cause I have the,
I am from you, not from Jason.
thumb note. Now I got to remember this bit. I forgot what the. Damn, I forgot it. I haven't played it for a long time. I forgot it. I can do you the Judgment Day solo quickly.
Well, so here you go.
Thank you for allowing my guitars to survive another day.
That was he was being gracious. He was allowing. Well, and I will say, Australian Jason, that can be your assignment, and then make sure that you come back again next week, and because Mr. Glass has spoken, he wants to hear the solo.
No, I'm a Van Halen freak. Man, I cried so hard when he died, guys. You don't even know what he meant to me.
You look up on YouTube, Mr.
What
Glass.
it did for my life, listening to his playing. I owe my career to him bringing me my interest into music.
And I know how you feel. I was in the Las Vegas airport, and the only time I really had my brain entirely shut down is when I was waiting for my bags, and I looked over to the right, and B.B. King was standing about 5 feet from me, and I literally could not talk. I mean, I wanted to go shake his hand and thank him for an incredible lifetime full. I mean, a guy who can play one note for 15 minutes and tear your heart out. How many of those come along in a lifetime?
Yeah. I will say that is one of the blessings of being well, we're officially getting off track. It's one of the blessings of being having done live music. I did live music for long enough to have some cool BB King stories. I mixed for BB King at the White House for Bill Clinton in one of the first HD shows produced in the United States. So there you go. That's my BB King story. I literally hung out with BB King in the warming tent and had dinner and like chatted blues with BB
Maddox,
King.
I hate you.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. Anyway, Mr. Glass, I know there's got to be some cool piece of gear that you've used, be it 30 years ago or 3 minutes ago, that is like a highlight for you, like something that you just love to touch and play with.
Wow, dude. I mean, like, It's always just the last one. The last one I discovered, you know,
which is valid.
Yeah, I've spent the last week playing with SDR radios and computer processing to decode data in FM broadcasts. But you know the answer, man. It always goes back to the SM58.
Well, it's well, and you talked about, you know, making your career.
Is the SM58 a great microphone because it's a great microphone, or because everybody is so damn used to it and it's just ubiquitous that it's like etched itself in our mind as a great piece of gear?
Brian, shall I?
Yes.
I think it's the latter, by the way.
It's that for sure. So in a previous episode, we talked about the SM58 and my feelings about it. It's one of the most perfect machines ever devised by human engineering. And I include that with the Space Transport System main engine.
Which it can record without distorting.
Correct. It has a 164 dB tolerance. It's just because it's so simple and elegant and ergonomic and natural to use for both the user singer and the engineer dealing with the signal. It's durable. It's almost undestroyable. And how many years old, guys? What, 1950 something?
I think it was like 50 or so. There was some anniversary this year.
Right. I mean, yeah, we've had 70 years to try to improve on it, and there have been improvements made, but
kind of like the cockroach.
I'd be interested in
the cockroach of microphones
hasn't evolved.
I'm sure she'll.
Millions of years.
Points off for 57s that don't have the ball.
Well, but they're not intended to be spit into.
That's true.
Right? So it's a variant.
Yeah. I just want to add to this though. 58s are great unless there are more than 2 on the stage for vocalists.
Dude, I disagree, man. Back when I was a green newbie, I was mixing the Temptations on bar stages in Detroit with rudimentary JBL wedges, slamming, screaming in their faces. And I had 7 singers on stage with 100 and some odd dB, and it sounded rad out of the wedges and out of the PA.
Yeah, I've done a tremendous number of shows on 58s, which is why we did essentially an entire episode on 58s. But I've got a few more folks I got to get in what their favorite bits are before we wrap this party. I need to figure out a way to stretch this party longer or have more of them. I think maybe not waiting 4 months between shows would be a place to start. Keith, tell me something that you think is cool.
Well, I mean, again, I kind of agree with Jesse. I think that the remote control, wireless remote control from tablet is probably one of the greatest innovations, because now we can walk the venue with ease. I don't like using it by itself. Obviously I want faders. But my real favorite, other than that, is probably going to go to my SM91. I absolutely love that microphone. I've used it for so many things besides kick drum, and it sounds so much better than a beta. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. It's it's come in handy a lot of shows. I can remember I was doing an event, and it was an Irish festival, and they decided that they were going to have a church service, and they needed a microphone for the altar. They put a table up on the stage and made it an altar, and I put the priest didn't want a microphone like sticking in front of him, and I said, well, let's use my 91 and we'll just put it on the table. Just don't put the book on top of it. So that, I mean, that's been probably, my favorite thing. As long as there's a hole in the kick drum or someplace else that I need stand up bass, put it on the floor in front of a cello.
Or tap dancers. It's
Tap
fantastic.
dancers, absolutely. I've done that as well. Tap dancers. There was a band that toured. I can't remember the name of the band, and they didn't have a drummer. They had a tap dancer, and she actually had it was a female, it was a woman, and she actually had a box with microphones built into that box, and there were some 91s in there. They had a hit. I can't remember who they were, but whatever. It's pretty, it's much more versatile than people think it is. We used to record. We used to have 2 of the Radio Shack versions. Remember those guys, right? Of the PZMs, and
it was a Crown. It was a
Crown. That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. But it was branded Radio Shack, and
really
we had one on the right wall and one on the left wall. And
I still own.
That came out of that venue was amazing.
I still own an Audio-Technica stereo version of that microphone. I don't know if they still make it. But it's fantastic, and I bought it for a tap dancing show. And
nice. And with the Radio Shack / Crown, if you just bumped up the voltage from 12 volts to 24 volts, then you got.
I forget when they started building
good trick
into them. And I remember there was a time when the transformers were this external thing, and then you had to hook up the XLR.
Oh yeah.
And I don't remember if they had the switch, that EQ switch with the kick drum on the bottom.
No, this SM did not have the switch, and it did have the external transformer.
Yeah, you guys are kind of swimming back and forth between Shure boundary mics and Crown boundary mics. Like you're talking about PZMs with the external power supply box and transformer. The first PZMs had that. The Radio Shack things were PZMs and that kind of thing. But
they're all the same engineering.
We're loving boundary mics. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. They are more versatile than people think. And if I had to pick, if I had to pick like one kick drum mic, the like Desert Island kick drum mic, I would probably take the Beta 91.
Yeah, I remember when the first engineer rolled through. I was working for the local sound company and rolled through and had this plate of metal that they threw into the pillow on the kick drum, and I was like, "What are you doing? Like that's strange." And of course, it sounded amazing, and 6 months later, it was on everybody's rider, and we had to buy half a dozen of them, and that was fine. Ike, what's your favorite cool little piece of gear, old, new?
Okay, I have 2. I'm going to share my screen quickly. The first one is the Kaltman Creations RF Command Center, which I've found tremendously useful for so many of the shows that I've done. And it's one of those things that every once in a while I go, I don't have time to bring it, or I don't have time to set it up. And then I go, man, I wish that I had used it. So I'm just going to share screen quickly. I'll show you a screenshot of what the display looks like, the way I use it. So in the top, you get a scan, which I like to do. I have other analyzers to do more localized scans, like 1 meg. What's that one frequency look like? But I like to have a big one to keep track of all my chickens. And then you can set up these monitoring panels down here, which are actually, like, for example, where it says IAMs. So that's actually reading the RF level of the in-ears off air. Which none of the other monitoring programs like Workbench or all they show you for your in-ears is how much audio the engineer is pounding them with, and whether they're muted or not, and the frequency and all that stuff. But they don't actually show you the off-air RF level. And if you click on this little speaker up here, you can actually demodulate them and listen to them as well. And I found that tremendously helpful for things like in-ears, and also when BTRs were still common, or down here the Radcom or whatever, you can look at what your transmits are doing and keep track of them, and I find that really useful. So that's number 1. And
yeah, that's very cool. That's yes, that's very cool. Now I have to spend money I don't have, so thanks for that.
Coltman's out of business.
Oh,
yeah,
well,
and you know
now
who
I have
has
to
the
go
last
steal
brand
some
new
ones.
one? You know who has the last brand new one for sale? I do. But this was
now I see your trick.
This was not a sales plug. It really wasn't. But my other favorite thing is this little box that I build, which is started out as an 1/8 inch stereo to balanced TRS output, basically like a DI for your iPhone or an iPad, or the 1/8 inch output on a computer or whatever. But I use and it sounds really, really good at that. And I've started doing some experiments about using it as a DI on actual instruments, and I'm getting some very positive feedback on that. And I use one for my stereo at home and all music that I listen to in the shop. And I've got some engineer friends that own them that use them to play their walk-in tunes. And it just sounds really good. And this is the raw material, this little circuit board that goes inside it. And why does it sound good? Because it doesn't do anything to the sound except make it louder. It just adds 12 dB of gain and balances it. And I had an Audio Precision for a while, and I measured it, and it is flat from 9.5 hertz to 85K and 3 dB down at 125K. And you think, well, why do I need that for the output on my computer or my phone? And the thing is that when you use something that has that kind of quality to it, what comes out of those things is so much better than what anybody ever gave it credit for. You would be amazed. And I've heard things like the difference between taking an 1/8 inch jack to 2 XLRs into an S6L versus using this. And on that particular, I can't remember the song, but there was something that was going, and with the S6L, it's like, and when it went through this box, it was like, oh, that's a shaker. And it's like, so the transient reproduction on it is very good. And
it's the ring of keys test.
It is the ring of keys test, and this will pass that with flying colors. So, and lately I've been fooling around. I've been fooling around with it on the bench, and I've just been trying different chips. And I started trying older chips in it just to see. And I put a 5532, which is like an industry standard chip in there. And sure enough, things like hi-hats and snare drums and tambourines and all that stuff started sounding more like modulated white noise and less like what they actually were. And it's like, yeah. So anyway, that's why it's one of my favorite things.
You gave lots of valid reasons. Usually my reasons are because it's cool and it's green and I like it. So it's good to know that there are folks with smarter ideas than mine. Mr. Broughton, what is your favorite cool thing?
Well, I've been thinking about this while everybody's talking. I guess if you want to go through history, there's a couple things. I remember back in the analog day, a couple of things that I really thought were amazing. The old DBX 160X, it was like a compressor that worked on everything. You put on the bass, you just dial it in. Only had 3 controls, but it worked. It just, now it sounds good. It was super. LA4s were similar in that way that they had a similar, just very few controls, but they just had the right sound right off the bat.
I upgrade both, by the way.
Oh, fantastic! And of course, the first time I got to
bass guitar.
First time I got to use
kind of wild. Compressors now on even budget consoles have so many variables and so much discrete control. Like, who really needs to dial in, decimal values of their ratio on compressors? It's kind of like a workflow thing.
But if it was wrong, it's kind of like I don't know if you think about the software thing where if software does it right, you don't need a lot of adjustments. It's correct already. And there's so many things that need a ton of adjustments because they're wrong right off the bat. They need to be tweaked until they sound right.
Well, it's also the degree of tweak or the how fine something needs to be tweaked, that a lot of things are just too finely tuned. There's no reason that you should be making tenths of decimal values of like a ratio on a compressor. It's kind of like if you go to McDonald's and you order a Big Mac, like you want pickles on it, like, oh, well, you want like an eighth of a pickle, or do you want the pickles on the left, or just make it right. Just like you got to kind of.
Well, you're absolutely right. And not to mention that those old hardware pieces of gear, the speed of their attack, of their gain reduction, were just right.
Just right.
You didn't even know what it was. You're not dealing with, is it
if it wasn't right, just press the over easy. Press the over easy.
Right.
That is right.
Digital processing is perfectly capable of flattening a sine wave if you set it up wrong. But those old pieces of gear were designed to make things sound good. They weren't even capable of doing that in the worst incompetent hands.
Yeah,
like me at the time when I was new.
I know what you mean, right? More idiot proof.
And any of you guys ever using a Novason console?
Oh, sure. I still think to this day, I still think it had one of the best interfaces ever. Very few.
It was a great. It was a great console, but the compressor, however it came from the factory, it was like set in its like most extreme mode. And so if you were just going, oh, I think I'll just put a compressor in on this channel and punched it, I mean, it was basically off. Like turning the compressor on was like basically turning the channel off, because it was like, like infinity to 1 and a ratio of -40 or something like that. It was just like slam. I was like, oh, no. It just like,
clearly French musicians needed a lot of help.
Yeah. Once you got in there and tweaked that so that it was like, had a threshold of say 0 or something like that. So it didn't go to work right away. It actually sounded pretty good, but the just the way they parked it when they programmed it was like not good.
So go ahead. I was just gonna say I'm really surprised no one has mentioned any Lexicon reverbs at 224.
You haven't let me.
41 or 40.
Let me finish.
Yeah. Time out. Mr. Broughton.
A couple more things.
He hit a nail, and then everybody was like, ah! But he's not done yet. Go ahead, please.
I thought it was really funny. You guys are talking about dragging out the umbilical cord to use the old the TC and some of the other things. Do you remember Edgar Winter dragging out the keyboard for Frankenstein with a giant umbilical that he could barely drag, and it was about 4 cables. Anyway, I just pictured that thing as people were dragging out the umbilical. But I mean, the first time I got to use the Heritage was amazing. The first time I got to hear an Alec, a 480, it's like, oh my God! So that's what a reverb sounds like. That's what a mixer. I don't even need to EQ this channel. It just sounds so nice. Like I have all these knobs, but I don't need to use them. That was my feeling when I finally got to touch a Midas for the first time. But as I go through,
that the EQ actually did something.
Sure. Well, some of the other ones did too. Soundcraft was pretty good with your EQ.
Remember putting on cans, queuing up the returns from a 480L? I mean, you heard it, you solo it in the PA, and it's like, yeah. And then you put the cans on, you're like,
is it real, or is that the room?
Yes.
I know.
Silly.
Too real.
Silly.
Way too real. Those things were amazing.
Video of the guy remixing the Doobie Brothers Long Train Running on an SSL. It's a really interesting watch. I'll post it in the chat.
Yeah, I saw that. That was really very informative.
Your head just dives into every little nuance of trying to get ready for mastering.
And the first song I learned in a band when I was
Long Train Running.
Yeah, when I was in.
Well, Mr. Lipnick, that's a perfect transition because you have not contributed, I don't think.
I sort of touched on some other stuff, but I'll just say, well, there's 2 things. One is, Jason, you're absolutely right about the SM58s. What I failed to mention was, you got to have good singers who are right on the mic and the whole thing, and that makes a huge difference. Because I have done shows where you reminded me I did shows where it sounded better because there were good singers, with a bunch of 58s on stage. But I'll just go back just because I do remember when I was mixing like bar bands and a couple of bands that had brought me on to mix their shows on a semi-regular basis. And I was also working theater, and I was able to borrow a PCM 60 reverb, Lexicon reverb, and a PCM 40, I think it was a 41 or 42, one or the other. I think it was a 42. And I owned my own Effectron. Remember those things?
Yep. I've got 3.
Yeah.
The Effectron 64. But just having like those 3 special effects, and I didn't know friggin' EQ and compression like you should know at that stage in your career. But early on, just dialing that stuff in, it just made the band sound so much better. And I was probably about 22 years old or something like that. It felt really good. I felt like, oh, I'm contributing creatively now instead of having to fight the PA. Who cares about fighting the PA? I'm just going to work on this stuff. It's more fun. So I think those were really game changers, because it wasn't like just crappy old delay or reverb. You actually had some real tools at that point.
Well, and the PCM 42 and PCM 60 are two of my faves, because again, there wasn't too many controls. There wasn't too much stuff.
You could
and I
play
loved the
and the
whole,
artificial sounds that they could make that could
was also really
enhance
cool.
what you were doing. Go to the left side of the buttons on a PCM 60 and start making these ridiculously small rooms that are, absolutely unrealistic. But all of a sudden, this drum
cool.
just blew out of the PA.
Did you guys see the thing that Dave Ratt did about how you have to overload the input to make it work?
Yep.
Who knew?
Apparently he did. But no, I mean, those are great. The PCM 42, I remember there was a magic spot that I would set the delay time to, so that basically slow songs was knob all the way to the left, and fast songs was knob all the way to the right. And basically it just went from, a nice long trailed echo to a little short slapback. And it was just like zoop, zoop. Like I did so many opening bands and so many, I don't know what the next song is. I don't know what's going to happen, going on the fly. And it was just like zip, zip, zip. And, as soon as we started upgrading to, later things with more and more, the other one was the SDE 3000.
SDE 3000, yeah.
Yep.
It was just, it had presets and that was great, but it was, I just wanted to be able to go zoop and it did a thing super fast, zoop and it did a thing. That's what I wanted it to do. Ed Willock has not contributed. I'm running low on time, or we would chat for another hour because I'm enjoying this very much. But Ed, give me a favorite piece of gear. And I think we're looking at my console. So Andy Broughton is getting fancy. Ed, go ahead and I'll
just screen sharing with your QL editor.
Yeah, well, but what's happening is
VLC.
Andy Broughton is running QL editor locally in Canada, but he is controlling my console, which is a CL5, in Savannah, Georgia, directly from his console, and you are seeing my metering in Canada that is generated from Savannah, Georgia.
All right, y'all braggers. This is what you've been up to in California. It's time to fess up, dude.
Well, there has been
Brian was at the beach every day, and Andy was doing his gig.
It's with a VNC. It's just a VNC thing, or it's something.
This is Andy's baby, so I will not.
Contact me offline if you want to know more about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Ping Andy.
It's the new hip hop thing that everybody's doing
about it. Okay.
It's cool. It's very, very cool. Ed Willock, who already knows all about the cool stuff, because he has helped be a tester as well. Give me a favorite piece of gear that isn't Andy Broughton's new software.
Right. Well, eventually on AV Tech Talks that I host, we'll have Andy on to show us all, the whole world, what this thing can do, because it's pretty cool. But listening to everybody talk, there's been a bunch of pieces of gear. Like I have a couple of 160As, and they're not the X's, but they're the A's. They're just the XLR.
Which are great. Are fantastic.
Love them. Getting on the mic talks, Jesse brought up kick drum mics, and I have
D12.
a D12E. Yeah, I have two
Ringo
of these actually.
loves you.
I have two of these. So that's like, it doesn't come out much. It needs some service, some love, but it's a great sounding mic. So that's one of the cool things that I really enjoy. If I can screen share for a second, what I'll show you though, I have another super cool thing that I like is a pair of
a Neotech module. Yes.
From Series 3
heck
console.
Yeah.
Got a pair of those. Those have a great sound to them. It's just, they're in that studio that's in my background as, external preamps along with that API. But yeah,
Hey, what's your preamp in your SM7 with?
Right now, I'm running through a Cloud Lifter and QL1. So that's my audio chain right now. In that studio,
reason I came up, sorry to interrupt. The reason I came up with this circuit actually was not for what I'm using it for, but for Neotechs actually to balance the insert return point on consoles that had a 2-mix insert. A lot of them didn't, but so that's another reason or another thing that I use this for. Sorry to interrupt. Cool. Back to you, Ed.
No, that's great. One of the other things I have in that studio is a Joe Meek SC2, the Rev 1.07. There's just something about those old optical compressors, man. And the original Meek stuff, not the newer, darker green, fake Meek stuff, the old stuff. So those are kind of the things that I think are cool, like cool outboard gear, cool stuff, that's old and got just that sound. Even that console that's behind me. I mean, I think it's the only one in the U.S. It's a Tri-Tech. So when Trident closed, the engineers started their own thing and made basically an 80B on steroids. So it's a split console. The groups have 3-band EQ that the 80B didn't, and there's just more routing, and but it sounds like an 80B. So it's it has that EQ and that those preamps that sound great, and it's those kind of finds that I really go for. And I spent a while on Reverb and eBay looking for all those little nuggets when they would be at great prices, and I patiently waited until I could see someone drop the price just to the right point where I would snipe in and grab it. So that's kind of the thing I do, and the things I think are cool. But SM58s, to Jason's point, there's nothing wrong. They're great. My SM7B, it's the same capsule, just a different body. Yep. And different voicing. So I think everybody kind of touched on all the things that I think are really cool. And those couple of things I just showed are in my bag of tricks.
And the Q box.
I have an SM5B for the Fat Boy, where they used to have those big honking windscreens on them. And there was one guy in Chicago who still had parts, and you could replace them because the foam's getting roached out. Does anybody know anybody who still works on those old classics like that?
Sorry, what I was typing.
Shure SM5B. It's called the Fat Boy. It's a big honking set of windscreens. It was basically a 57 in a mounting, but it was it was the precursor to the SM7B you just showed.
Yeah, they were really popular in AM radio broadcast.
Absolutely.
All the way up through the 90s, even the early 2000s.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of that, and I still have 3 Sennheiser 421Us that I used to use for voiceover that were a good kick-drum mic too.
2 shell connectors.
Guitar also.
Yeah,
they sound great on anything.
It's somebody on Facebook, some young pup. I'll just say that. Posted something the other day, and they were like, they had dug out these old microphones from their church closet, and they were like, I have these old microphones, and I figure I need to replace them for like something new, because I'm sure the newer stuff is better. And it was like, like 7 matched SM81s that looked like they had never been used. And like, and it was just like, no. Yes, there's some awesome new microphones out, but guess what? The what is old is still good. I need to scoot, and so I'm going to wrap us by telling everybody what my favorite piece of gear is, which is not really true, but it's funny, like listening to everybody talking and running through a whole Rolodex. I didn't actually come up with something before the show. Like there were so many little like pieces of gear that I like, and little things like parametric EQs, KT405s, like all kinds of little analog bits and bobs. But when it all came down to it, I have a kind of an odd choice. I think that my choice would be a PM4000. And my reason that I would choose that is I have more like spine tingling memories standing in front of a PM4000 than anything else I have ever touched. I don't have any negative memories, at least caused by the console, standing in front of the green and purple knobs and the little VU meters bouncing up and down. But I have lots and lots of, I cannot believe that BB King or whomever is coming out of my PA and I get to control it. And it's just amazing and cool. Sorry, Bill.
You weren't listening on the headphones.
I've gotten over it.
Yeah, I actually, I mixed. Anyway, I have a lot of stories that have a PM4000 involved. I mixed James Brown at Union Station in Washington D.C., and because I was 100 feet away from the PA, I couldn't hear the PA at all because it's got an RT60 in that room of about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I mixed there were people close to the PA who appeared to be able to hear the show. I couldn't. And I just put the headphones on and I just mixed a show for the headphones, hoping that and people seemed to enjoy it. But again, that's one of my like memories. Like I distinctly remember that night of mixing James Brown at the Union Station and putting my headphones on and mixing the thing, and like the balcony over top, spilling the cocktail sauce in the middle of my console in the middle of the show. And it's just all the memories that have those green and purple knobs associated with them is just, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. It's like, the memories of the cool things that we've got to be a part of, and the cool things that we'll get to be part of, and some of the cool toys that make that all work. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to take us off of the
Missed you
YouTube.
all.